Good morning, ENGL 221 students. Welcome to Study Unit 4, Week 4 of our module, where we will be discussing the short story, Was It Heaven or Hell by Mark Twain. Before we begin this week's work, I'd like to share this message with you. Some of you have started at schools this week, and very soon you have to start on semester assignments and perhaps with practical teaching, and one can feel a bit overwhelmed. So I'd like to read to you a verse from Psalm 28, verse 7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. My heart leaps for joy, and with my song I praise him. So let us bow our heads and pray that God will give us strength during the coming week and the rest of the semester to follow. Dear God, please give me strength when I am weak, love when I feel forsaken, courage when I am afraid, wisdom when I am foolish, comfort when I am alone, hope when I feel rejected, and peace when I am in turmoil. Amen. On our work schedule, you will see we are in week 4. We are discussing study unit 4, Was It Heaven or Hell? The short story by Mark Twain. Please have a look at the assessment schedule in the last column. This coming week, starting on the 2nd of August, you will have to do the e-quiz on the yellow wallpaper. That e-quiz will be available from the 2nd of August to the 6th of August, and you will also have to submit the short questions on the yellow wallpaper. Remember, those short questions were already available from last week. We will also quickly discuss your semester assignment, and then remember that next week on the 6th of August, the submissions for your semester assignment will open. Following our discussion today on Was It Heaven or Hell, you will be ready to start with your assignment, to start planning it. But please keep this in mind. Analyze the question carefully so that you know what is being asked. Only quoting will not suffice. I'm interested in your own words, so please explain and support whenever you quote. Be careful of copying and plagiarizing from external sources. It could lead to a 0 mark. Similar submissions is disappointing and not truthful. Please do not copy each other's work. And give your opinion. Was it heaven or was it hell? Remember to please include your chosen topic, one of the topics that you are allowed to choose from. Please include it in your essay by referring to it in your introduction paragraph in such a way that it forms part of your thesis statement. The font that you should use is either Arial or Times New Roman, and the size must be 12. You may use a larger font size, such as 14, for headings. Spacing. Please use line spacing of 1.5. Longer quotations should be single-spaced and separated from the text. Paragraphs can be divided by leaving a blank line between each paragraph. Do not add pictures or try to decorate your work in any way. This is an academic essay and not a piece of art, so we focus on the content. Please do not exceed the allowed number of words. It's anywhere between 600 to 800 words. Use headings where needed. Page numbering, very important. Page numbering should be visible from the first page of the introduction, and page numbering must continue until the end of the document, including the bibliography. Remember to cite your sources by using in-text referencing, and also include all of the sources in your bibliography. As for the submission of your assignment, it must be submitted electronically on Turnitin, and remember to use the AROS assignment cover page. If your similarity percentage is higher than 20%, you need to make the necessary changes and resubmit. Your assignment must be submitted no later than the 3rd of September 2021 at 11 p.m. That is 11 at night. Now, what topic do you write your assignment on? You can choose one of these topics. Draw a contrast between the characters of the two aunts and the doctor respectively. Be sure to pay particular attention to the text and make specific references to their various characterization descriptions. Or you can outline any of the main themes explored in the story, explaining how it relates to the plot and the characters. You may make references to specific motives and other literary devices. Or you may write a close critical analysis of the following passage, relating it to the short story as a whole. After that, the two knew the limit of their strength and accepted their fate. They surrendered humbly and abandoned themselves to the hard requirements of the situation. Daily they told the morning lie and confessed their sin in prayer, not asking forgiveness, as not being worthy of it, but only wishing to make record that they realized their wickedness and were not desiring to hide it or excuse it. You may make references to specific themes, motives, and other literary devices. So let us now look closely at the short story Was It Heaven or Hell by Mark Twain, so that you may begin to plan and write your semester assignment. For this study unit 4, our outcome is to be able to write a critical analysis on a short story. And our assessment criteria is for you to understand and write a critical analysis on any literary text and to answer essay-type questions in which you critically analyze any aspect or extract from the short story, Was It Heaven or Hell, in the light of the short story as a whole and its main themes. You will remember from our discussion last week on the yellow wallpaper that we also discussed the background of the writer of any story or the author, and this time it's no different. So Mark Twain, if we look at his background, he was born on November 30th, 1835 in Florida, Missouri in the United States. His real name is Samuel L. Clemens, and he wrote under the pen name of Mark Twain. Mark Twain explored the American soul with a sharp eye for truth. He left school at the age of 12 after his father's death. The story that we are reading, Was It Heaven or Hell, was published in 1902 in the American magazine Harper's Magazine. The historical setting of this particular story appears to be the period of Mark Twain's life, which is between 1835 and 1910. We know that the historical setting and background of any story is very important. And in the case of this story, we look at Mark Twain and his life as the historical setting. His financial failings had serious consequences for his state of mind. He was not very good with money. It contributed to a growing pessimism in him. Remember, a pessimist is someone who sees the dark side and the negative side of everything. And also a deep down feeling in Mark Twain that the human existence was a cosmic joke perpetrated by a chuckling God. Chuckling is when you are laughing. 3 of his 4 children died while he was still alive, one in infancy, meaning as a baby. He had a very poor relationship with his remaining child. In his last years, he experienced many episodes of depression. He went into violent rages and instances of paranoia. Paranoia is feelings that you are being watched and people are following you, which of course is not the truth. Now, throughout Mark Twain's life, he critically reflected on God, and this was mainly based on the way he saw Christianity play out in history and also in his present day. Now, because Mark Twain so critically discussed and thought about Christianity and religion, he had a very particular worldview. He viewed religion, and predominantly Christianity, not just any kind of religion, as it was played out in the time he lived and in his day, and the context of Christianity as dishonest. Mark Twain had very little patience for purists who insisted that the slightest lie was an offense to God and would send you straight to hell. So let us look at the plot of the story. The two aunts that we read of, despise lying. Now, despise is an even stronger word than just hating something. They despise lying, and they believe that they know its horrifying consequences. One day, the adorable Helen tells a lie and admits this to the maiden aunts. Now, maiden is someone who's never been married. Hannah and Hester are unforgiving, and they drag her into her mother's sick room to confess this sin, the fact that she has told a lie. Mother Lester, however, sees only the Helen she has always loved, and this seems to end the disturbance. But the doctor overhears all of this, and he later storms at the aunts and he tells them, "Reform and learn to tell lies." Now, later on in the story, Helen falls deathly ill and she's fading fast. She's forbidden to go to her mother's sick room for fear of spreading the illness. Thus, it is up to the aunts to tell Mrs. Lester the horrible news of Helen's deathly illness. The aunts are horrified. They expect that Mrs. Lester will die within a day or two. And what would the point be to break her heart by telling her about Helen's illness? But what if lying about it meant that they would spend eternity in hell? To their credit, however, in the end they do lie. In their lie, Helen has the blush of health in her cheeks and serenity in her smile. The aunts were right. Mother Lester passed on in 2 days, and ironically she passed on the day of Helen's funeral. Now, Mark Twain believed that it would have been unethical were the aunts stubbornly to have maintained their purity at the cost of a dying woman's misery. And what he means by that, it would not have been ethical, moral, it would not have been right for the aunts to stubbornly just continue being pure and not telling a lie, and then causing Mrs. Lester even more misery. So it would not have been the right thing to do to tell Mrs. Lester that Helen was deathly ill. The right thing to do was rather to lie to her about it, because she was a dying woman in any case. In the story Was It Heaven or Hell, we first learn that Mrs. Lester has typhoid fever, and then, of course, later on, Helen also contracts this disease. Now, typhoid is caused by the bacteria Salmonella. This bacteria also gives us food poisoning. It is, of course, spread through food, drinks, and drinking water that are contaminated with infected fecal matter. Washing fruit and vegetables can spread it if contaminated water is used. Some people carry and spread the fever, but they do not get ill from it, so they are only the carriers of typhoid fever. Others continue to harbor the bacteria after their symptoms have gone. Sometimes the disease can appear again. People who test positive as carriers may not be allowed to work with children or older people until medical tests show that they are clear and no longer infected or carriers. And I've included a link here. You are welcome to go and read about very famous woman, Typhoid Mary, who was the first ever carrier of typhoid fever who did not get ill from it herself. Just a little bit of extra information. Now, of course, in any story, there's some kind of conflict. There's your antagonist and your protagonist. And in this story, the doctor emerges as the main antagonist, standing against the aunts and their moral high hypocrisy. The conflict comes before the two aunts as they must struggle with their own morality and their own souls against the dying days of their loved ones. One of the themes we find in Was It Heaven or Hell is truth versus compassion. At the start of the story, Hannah and Hester have a very rigid belief system that allows no lying. The world is a very white and black kind of place to them. They force their niece to confess lying in front of her mother because of the biblical principle of the law that visited the sins of the parent upon the child was by all right and reason reversible. Now, compassion in the story is introduced by the doctor, who knows the difference between a lie that helps and a lie that hurts. And he also reminds these two that they would have engaged in a silent lie by leaving Margaret's room if they had known he was listening at the door, not because they would have helped Margaret by doing so, but only to have saved themselves from his judgment. Another theme is hypocrisy. Now remember, hypocrisy is when you say one thing, but your life examines something the complete opposite. And in this book, it is specifically centered around piety or to be godly. Piety means to be godly or like God. The aunts who are very pious or who try to live a very pious life are more concerned about their own souls than the sin committed. And here's an extract. We should not have disobeyed for any ordinary cause, but this was vital. This was a duty. With a duty one has no choice. One must put all lighter considerations aside and perform it. We were obliged to arraign her before her mother. She had told a lie. So they are so concerned with their own souls and the fact that they believe any kind of lying will land you in hell, that they never for one moment stop to consider what it will do to Helen or to her mother when they bring her before her mother to confess her sin, to confess her lying. And remember, Mrs. Lester in the end only sees Helen as the kind and gentle girl that she's always known. The aunts continue this idea that lying will land you in hell, because they say that because to tell such a lie or any lie is a sin and could cost us the loss of our own, and they're talking about their souls here, and could cost us the loss of our own souls, would indeed if we died without time to repent. So because they feel so strongly about lying, this is why they drag poor Helen in front of her dying mother, in front of her ill mother, to confess her lie. Now, living with a lie seemed like heaven because Margaret was happy despite her illness. But keeping up with that lie that they were telling was hell because the twins were always worried about being found out. Remember, that's the lie they told Margaret when Helen was already ill. So it seemed like heaven because Margaret was happy to hear about her happy and healthy child. But it was hell for the twins, for the two aunts, because they were always scared that they would be found out. Lies cannot only harm the one being lied to, but it can also hurt the ones that are doing the lying. Now let's look at some motives in the story, and just to refresh your memory, we discussed motives in our very first lecture. Remember, a motive is very closely linked to the theme, and the example that I always give is when the theme, for example, is love, the motive could be roses. So every time a rose is mentioned, you think about the theme of that story, which is love. All right, so let's look at motives in Was It Heaven or Hell? The Lester household, which is considered a lie-free household, is supported by the two Lester twin sisters. Now, they are 67 years old, and they're also referred to as the two aunts. They are spinsters, meaning they've never been married. And the story draws very heavily on this image of purity in virginity. Also, the motive of big sin versus small sin. And let's read this extract from the story. They sat side by side, white and stern, gazing speechless upon the culprit, who was on her knees before them with her face buried first in one lap and then the other, moaning and sobbing and appealing for sympathy and forgiveness and getting no response, humbly kissing the hand of the one, then of the other, only to see it withdrawn as suffering defilement by those soiled lips. This, of course, is poor Helen begging for forgiveness after the lie that she is told, and the aunts are having none of it. They have no sympathy and no forgiveness for her. Another motive that we also find in this story is the motive of turning the truth into an idol. There's also the motive of Christian disagreement. We find this especially between the aunts and the doctor. They have very different views on Christianity and what Christianity is. There's also the motive of healthy versus sick, and this is a very ironic motive. Haughtiness. Haughtiness, of course, is when you believe that you are better than others. And then human strength versus godly strength. And there is another extract from our story to explain this motive. After that, the two knew the limit of their strength and accepted their fate. They surrendered humbly and abandoned themselves to the hard requirements of the situation. Daily, they told the morning lie and confessed their sin in prayer, not asking forgiveness as not being worthy of it, but only wishing to make record that they realized their wickedness and were not desiring to hide it or excuse it. This example is the two aunts who realize that even though they are so very much against any kind of lying, they do have to lie to Margaret every day. They cannot tell her that Helen is in fact quite ill. What is the point of view of Was It Heaven or Hell, or from what point of view is it told? Now, in Was It Heaven or Hell, we find the third person omniscient narrator, and this is very different from the yellow wallpaper where there was a first person narrator. And why do we say this is a third person omniscient narrator in Was It Heaven or Hell? Now, omniscient means knowing everything, and if you examine the story clearly, you will see that the narrator, or the way in which the story is being told, allows us to see it from everyone's point of view. The narrator knows everything and knows everyone and what they are thinking. Let us look at the list of characters. There is Mother, of course, who is Margaret Lester. She is dying of typhus, or typhoid fever as it is also called, and she's getting worse every day. Helen, she is Margaret's adorable 16-year-old daughter, so she is actually still a teenager. There is Hannah and Hester, the two biblically pure maiden aunts. They are 67 years old. And then their family doctor, who is mysteriously known in the community by the nickname the Only Christian. The two aunts, Hannah and Hester Gray, they are presented as being very moral. Moral means living your life according to biblical principles and living according to a certain set of moral rules, not doing the wrong thing, and so on. They are highly conservative Christians, highly moral and uncompromising. Uncompromising meaning you view the world as being either black or white. There's no gray area. Things are either right or wrong. You don't ever give in, and it is my way or the highway. If we look at the aunts in even more detail, we can see that by nature, so on the inside, these old ladies, these aged aunts were actually quite dear and lovable and kind and good. But the matter of morals and conduct, meaning the way you behave, their training had been so uncompromisingly strict that it had made them exteriorly austere, not to say stern. So even though they were actually very kind and good and lovable, they were so strict about the way you behave and that you should behave in a biblical way that on the outside to other people they looked very stern and very angry and very severe. Their influence was so effective in the house that the mother and the daughter conformed to its moral and religious requirements cheerfully, contentedly, happily, and unquestionably. And both the aunts were obdurate in their righteousness. Now, obdurate, if you are obdurate, it means you stubbornly refuse to change your mind about anything. And that's exactly how the aunts behaved with regards to morals and how you conduct yourself. The aunts can also submit to authority. And there's a passage from the story that very nicely describes this to us. They sat down, distressed and indignant, but obedient, under compulsion. And later, from chapter 4 onwards, after the doctor had spoken to them, they tell unconscious lies. Daily they told the morning lie and confessed their sin in prayer, not asking forgiveness as not being worthy of it, but only wishing to make record that they realized their wickedness and were not desiring to hide it or excuse it. So once the aunts start telling a lie, they do tell the lie in the morning, and then later on they confess to God that they have sinned. But it's very interesting to note that they do not ask for forgiveness. They only confess so that God will realize that they know they've done wrong and they are not trying to hide it. But they don't ever ask for forgiveness. In contrast to the aunts, we see the doctor, and remember previously we said that he is the antagonist. He is the opposite to the sisters in most ways. Have a close look at chapter 2. He firmly held on to what he believed, and he was willing to defend it. He led a rough earlier life, but he had repented. And what you see is what you get with him. Necessarily, such a man is impressionable, impulsive, emotional. This one was, and had no gift at hiding his feelings, or if he had it, he took no trouble to exercise it. He carried his soul's prevailing weather in his face, and when he entered a room, the parasols or the umbrellas went up, figuratively speaking, according to indications. Continuing with our characterization of the doctor, if we look at these two extracts from the book, we clearly see what kind of a person he was. When the soft light was in his eye, it meant approval and delivered a benediction. A benediction is kind of like a blessing that someone says over you. When he came with a frown, he lowered the temperature 10 degrees. He was a well-beloved man in the house of his friends, but sometimes a dreaded one. Some of the symbolism we find in the story. First of all, the house as a setting. And so in this peaceful heaven, note there the house being described as a peaceful heaven. And so in this peaceful heaven, there were no clashings, no irritations, no fault finding, no heart burnings. Another symbol is the one of the sick room as a place of deteriorating health, but also deteriorating morals, because it is in the sick room where the aunts also begin to tell a lie, where they, in the beginning of the story, are so very much against any type of lying. There's also the symbol of healthy versus sick, and then the symbol of the doctor as an agent of change, and that is symbolically like a biblical prophet who brings about change. When we look at irony as it is portrayed in the book, very ironic, Hannah and Hester's surname Gray. Now remember, I told you before, to them, life is very either black or white. There are no gray areas. And it's ironic that their surname, in fact, is Gray. And also ironic labeling the doctor as a Christian devil. Because how can one be a Christian and devil at the same time? And let's look at that extract from Was It Heaven or Hell? Dare, said Hester with temper, and dashing the water from her eyes. He will dare anything, that Christian devil, but it will do no good for him to try it this time. But laws, Hannah, after all said and done, he is gifted and wise and good, and he would not think of such a thing. It is surely time for one of us to go to that room. What is keeping him? Why doesn't he come and say so? And what is also interesting and ironic is that one of the sisters labeled him as a Christian devil when we know that people from the village actually called him the only true Christian. What is, of course, also very ironic is that the aunt's lies become bigger and bigger as the story progresses. The lies that they told Margaret become more complex and more intricate. But Margaret, she still believes her sister's righteousness right to the end. She still believes that they are good and moral and would never tell a lie. That is so good. Others one could not trust, but you two guardian angels, still is not so true as you. Others would be unfaithful, and many would deceive and lie. Isn't that ironic? If only Margaret knew that they had in fact been lying to her for a very long time. Let us look at some allusions in the story. Remember, an allusion is when something in the story refers to something else that is well known. It could either be a well-known passage from a book, it could be a well-known movie, it could be a well-known person. Let's look at some allusions in Was It Heaven or Hell? First of all, the story alludes to the Bible in many instances, and then specifically the first of the 10 commandments in Exodus 20 verse 5. It also references to the pilgrimage and to heaven and hell. Now, in Was It Heaven or Hell, there's also a foreshadowing. A foreshadowing is when a particular part in a story alludes to something that will happen in the future. Look at that example there, or to that extract, the foreshadowing to death. Shuddering to think how desolate it would be with this light gone out of it. And the mood in the story is very gloomy and very dark. Students, I want to encourage you to use the discussion forum, which we will set up for you under week 4. Discuss with your fellow classmates some issues, some themes in the story, things like the conflict, the characters, some of the themes. But take note, please read the book before you join, or read the story before you join the discussion forum, so that your contribution will be worthwhile. The discussion forum will be open and available from Monday, but again, please make sure that you have read the story before you contribute to this forum. In your preparation for our next lecture, week 5, where we will begin with poetry, read through study unit 4 in your activity pack. Please visit the website indicated there for you, and also please watch the video indicated. The link is indicated there for you. I want to encourage you students to work really hard at for your semester assignment so that you can get a good mark. Please do not hesitate to contact the assistant via email if you have any questions. If the question is for me, she will make sure that I get it as well. Remember to use your own words as much as possible when you are doing your assignment. Remember that the assignment submissions will open on the 6th of August, and that you must have your assignment submitted by the 3rd of September, no later. And I also just want to remind you that this coming Monday, the 2nd of August, is when you can complete your e-quiz on the yellow wallpaper. You will be able to do that from the 2nd, which is Monday, until Friday the 6th at 11 that night. The e-quiz will open 7 o'clock in the morning this coming Monday, and this coming week from the 2nd to the 6th of August is also when you have to submit those short questions on Turnitin on the yellow wallpaper. Good luck for the week ahead. Work hard on your assignment, and may you have a wonderful week.